The following podcast is brought to you by PeacemakerNetwork.com. PeacemakerNetwork.com. Audio is provided by Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com.
Well, Epstein is in the news again, and not in a good way. There are still some files about that case that has not yet been released about him and his crimes. Hey, and the fact that they are not released, does this mean that the government is hiding something from us? Well, we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. It is what some people are calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crimebuster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Today we're going to revisit the Jeffrey Epstein case. Now, we've done a whole series on that in prior time, but some things today is really making the news. A lot of people today there's a lot of buzz out there about Jeffrey Epstein. Just who was he really? Was he a spy? Was he connected to other networks, spy networks across the world? Was he a Mossad agent? Lots of things have been said, but what is the truth? Well, we're going to try to get to the truth today on today's podcast. First of all, let's welcome you that are joining us today for the first time. We love our first-time listeners. We'd like to invite you to reach out with a shout-out. You can reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Ask questions, make suggestions, even lodge objections. Also, we'd like to encourage you to check out our sponsor, PeacemakerNetwork.com. So let's talk about it. By now, most of America and most of the world, they know that there's a multimillionaire by the name of Jeffrey Epstein. And most of us know today that, this multimillionaire died in a jail cell in New York. Now, it was announced as a suicide. Yet there are others who believe that, he may have been murdered there. That's right, murdered there. That's what some people are saying. And the fact that while many are led to believe that the files of his life and crime, terrible crimes, by the way, in my opinion, the most terrible, that is, sex abuse against minors. Those files, most people thought that they were going to be released, especially just of late when it was announced we're going to have transparency here. But for some reason, that is not happening. Not like we thought it would. And so, unfortunately, all this leads to suspicion that just maybe the government is hiding something from us. Or maybe not. I'll let you decide. First, let's talk about some background for our podcast today. Jeffrey Epstein was an American financier. And, it's kind of hard to say this with the same sentence, isn't it? He was an American financier and he was also a sex offender, sadly. He was born and raised in New York City, and he began his professional life by teaching at the Dalton School. Now get this, here is the little twister on this. He was teaching there despite lacking a college degree. He was dismissed from that school because there was some hanky-panky going on there. Then he entered the banking and finance sector, and he worked at Bear Stearns. Worked there at that big financial institution in various roles before he started his own firm. Now, there's quite a bit out there about his early life. He was Jeffrey Epstein, born January the 20th, 1953. Born there in Brooklyn, in a borough of New York City. His parents, Pauline Seymour, they were Jewish, by the way, and remember that. That goes into this story. They were Jewish, and they had married in 1952, just shortly before his birth. Pauline, she worked as a school aide, was a homemaker. They described her as a wonderful mother. Despite the fact that she had a full-time job, she was also a good homemaker. That's according to former childhood friends of Epstein. Seymour, now he worked for the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation, was a groundskeeper, a gardener. And Jeffrey, he was the oldest of 2 siblings. He had a brother by the name of Mark. And they were up there, well, they actually lived in a private gated community called Seagate. Now, Epstein, he attended local public schools. First, he attended the public school of 188, Public School 188. And then he attended the Mark Twain Junior High School that was nearby. And he was smart right off the bat because he got his money by, well, he earned money by tutoring classmates. Now, those who knew him say that he was sweet and generous, although a little bit quiet and nerdy. They nicknamed him Epi. He was described as just an average boy, very smart in math. A little bit overweight, freckles, always smiling. That's what a female friend said later. 1967, well, he attended the National Music Camp there at the Center of Arts. And a lot of people may not know this. He began playing the piano when he was 5. And he was regarded by some as a talented musician. He graduated in 1969, age 16, by the way, because he skipped 2 grades. Now, I'm telling you, he's a smart dude. He's got a lot of intelligence. Unfortunately, he wasn't smart enough to realize that you just can't always get in crime without doing the time, right? Well, later that year, he actually attended advanced math classes at Cooper Union. Then he changed colleges in 1971. He was at the Institute of Mathematical Sciences at New York University. But he left there, as I said earlier. He didn't have a degree when he started teaching in this school. He left there in 1974, June. Now, around that time, he worked for teenagers. He would teach teenagers at the Dalton School. He started there in September of 74, graduated in June of 74. That school, by the way, is located in Upper East Manhattan. And I guess the point is, it's pretty incredible that he landed that job without a college degree, which tells you that this guy had a way of dealing with people that he was very charming, and some people call that conning, but he was very charming, and he was able to get things that other people couldn't get. He was known for having a charismatic personality, but he got in trouble there because he was, treating those students more like friends than their teacher. He showed inappropriate behavior toward especially underage female students at the time. You're seeing the pattern here, right? Paid them constant attention, even showed up at parties where young people were partying, kind of wanting to be one of them, you might say. Some other students, they reported that they often saw him flirting with these female students. And, of course, that got him in hot water there. But he seems to have a way most of the time, when he gets in trouble, landing on his feet. Because he became acquainted with Alan Greenberg. Greenberg was the chief executive officer of Bear Stearns. I think he did that because one of his students was related to Greenberg or knew him or something like that. Well, he gets known, as you're probably seeing another pattern here, for bending the rules. He got pretty good at hiding money from the IRS for its clients. But that gets him in a little trouble. But not before building a very strong contact list of the rich. We used to call it in the old days, you have your Rolodex of all these contacts. Today, you got them in your phone. But he had a lot of those contacts, and then he began to help them with their money, moving it around. And of course, always took a portion for himself, quite a big portion. So that's the way he began to build his own financial nest egg. And then he became a wealthy person of his own. Now, I do want to kind of interject something here. While that appears to be the way he made his money, there are other people who think differently. They think that he was actually attached to a kind of a spy ring of some sort, because he would, in his ability to move that money, he would help other governments out with that. We'll get to that in a moment. So he went out on his own when he left Bear Stearns with a who's who contact list of the world's most wealthy. And it is believed because he was able to bend the rules, he became quite popular. There are some unconfirmed reports now that some of the people that he moved money for were connected, especially to the government of Israel. Remember, his parents were Jewish. And maybe some other countries as well. We do know that he dealt with international money, and that was what perhaps connected him to some of the spy organizations of the world. In other words, he would launder money for governments, especially their secret stash funds. Oh, now we do know this. Governments have those secret stash funds. Those are the funds they do the black ops from, and they work all over the world. In America, we say it helps us promote democracy, and it keeps our country secure. That's what we say, right? So when you hear that Epstein was a spy, it does not mean, according to others, it does not mean that he would be necessary on somebody's payroll, that he would officially be on the books as quote, unquote spies. I don't know whether many spies are on the books, but he wasn't, but rather he would help these people, and he was connected to the spy world. He would move money all the time, taking a little portion for his own good. We're going to get a little more into that in just a moment, but now it's time for us to take a little break as we get more into the story and share with you what we call Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, our Crazy Crook story today is another Florida man. That's right, Florida man. This one from Brooksville, Florida. This is a guy who faces multiple charges now. Well, according to the Florida Highway Patrol, dispatchers received calls from multiple witnesses around 8:30 a.m. on a past Friday a few weeks ago. And those reports, a man operating a lawnmower, a lawnmower, erratically on the south side bound of the Suncoast Parkway. That's State Route 589 for us here in Florida. Troopers say, traffic cameras actually showed this lawnmower going south from Citrus County to another county nearby, and the rider, he was pulled over just south of the exit to US 98. Now, the Florida Highway Patrol says the guy his name is Christopher Spain, 38 years of age, driving this lawnmower on a main highway, and, he showed several signs of impairment, including small pupils, flushed skin, dry mouth, and visible irritation to the inside of his nose. Now, he also, interesting enough, had a small blue straw in his back pocket. According to troopers, he repeatedly would clear his throat. He sniffed and spit during the traffic stop. And this crazy crook, he decided that he wasn't going to perform any field sobriety exercises. So, even though he would not perform those, he was arrested, of course, for DUI, driving under the influence. So here is this idiot that gets out and drinks and drives. That's crazy enough. What's even crazier? He did it on a lawnmower. Yes, sirree, on a lawnmower. So here you go, another lawnmower drunk driver, and caught right here in the Sunshine State of Florida. So you folks that come down here to vacation, just leave your lawnmowers back home. And by the way, do not drink and drive. That, my friend, is Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Now, let's just take a moment as we get back into the story and remind you that this is a real crazy story, because years ago in the 2004, 2005, right during that time, this guy would actually recruit young women, when I say young women, young teens, to come to his house, his mansion there in West Palm Beach across the ridge there where the rich and the wealthy, probably the most wealthiest zip code in the world. He would take money and pay people to recruit young girls to come to his place and give him massages. under the disguise of giving a massage, he would then sexually assault these young girls. So one of the parents actually took this to the police at West Palm Beach, and the police began to open up an investigation. Actually, by the time the investigation was over, they found 37 of these young women, most of them teens, as young as 14 years of age and younger maybe. And so there was a good case to put him away for years and years and years. But wait a minute, there was a deal made, and he ended up instead going to what I call a glamour slammer. So he got away with it. We'll tell you a little more about that into the story. And some people think that the way he got away with it was that he just bought a high-priced attorney, several of them, and he was able to circumvent the justice system that way. But there are others who believe there was something more to it. There are others who believe that because he had forged a special relationship with the Mossad, Israel's equivalent to the America's CIA, well, because of that, they believe that that was the reason he was getting away with all these things he was doing. And there was even somebody that reported that when Acosta, the district attorney, the federal district attorney, when he actually turned around, and first of all, they all said they were going after him, throw the book to him, but when he changed that course, somebody said that he said, now again, this is he said, that he did it because of the intelligence community. Now, that has not been verified, but it has been reported by some pretty reliable sources. So did he? Was he tied up to that, you see? Now, I should say this is strongly denied by the current leaders in Israel, but at the same time, it's counteracted by others. Now, there are other people that believe that because he had this thing going, they also, when they raided his house, by the way, he had been tipped off for the raid back in early 2000. He had been tipped off with that raid, by the way, but they still found a lot of incriminating evidence, including pictures, including videos, and one of the raids found videos where he actually would record certain things going on in certain bedrooms. And there are others that believe that he would use these recordings as a means to blackmail these people. That's why he was able to steal millions and millions of dollars from his clients. Clients are not going to say anything because of the fact that he had this incriminating information on video that could blackmail those. So you see, there's a whole lot of room here for these conspiracy theories to develop. But the question is, are they theories? Are they rumors? Or is there an element of truth to it? Again, the Israeli government strongly denies it. Now, there's a journalist by the name of Glenn Greenwald, and on X, he gave some reasons why he believes that literally he was connected to the Mossad. First of all, he says one of Epstein's closest friends was a former Israeli prime minister, Barak. Secondly, they said a key source of Epstein's vast wealth through mysterious it is, as it's moved around, but it was from another person by the name of Lex Wexner. And there was a lot of money that he got from Lex Wexner. When I say lot, I mean a boatload. I'm talking in the millions. And anybody who knows Lex Wexner knows his primary life cause is Israel. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell, she's in prison now because she was really his pimp. She was the one that would really lead this, I don't know what you would call it, it certainly is illegal, but she would lead this chain of people that would get these young women for Epstein. And her father was the billionaire Robert Maxwell. And some people say that he was a Mossad agent. And by the way, if you want to get into the conspiracy holes, and I do not really get involved in those a lot, but if you do want to get into one of those holes, check out Robert Maxwell and check out the fact that he had a very mysterious death in himself that was reported. Now, Maxwell was British, but he was also one of those that was able to escape from Germany. And he was very closely tied with Israel. In fact, so closely tied, listen to this, Israel gave him a state funeral when he died. And when Epstein went to Israel, he certainly got another reason. He got the red carpet treatment. He would bankroll major investments in Israeli tech. Israeli tech is, of course, closely tied to the spy community as well. So this reporter, who then got a whole lot of backwash because of what he was saying, he did say something that I think is very interesting to think about. He says simply this. He says, fine, if you don't think that this is theoretically possible, then why can't Bondi of the CIA or the FBI, why can't they just come out and say, no, there's no way that Epstein was tied to any spy network whatsoever, particularly Israel? Why don't they just say that? And why are they still holding back these Epstein files? Why is the government not releasing them? Why did the government go so soft on the first charges of sex trafficking minor girls? Why did they go so soft back there 10 years or so or more ago when they had the first case against him? And why did they turn around and put him in a glamour slammer here in Florida? And I do say glamour slammer. He had a whole wing to himself. According to reports, he had his own food brought in. They put him on work release where he spent 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, working not from a jail, but from his own offices while he was serving that minor sentence, a minor sentence compared to dozens of years he should have been spending in prison. That was his very first jail sentence. He even hired the police officers, the sheriff's deputies. He even hired those that would be his security while he was doing his day work in his office. I know this sounds, it sounds incredible. It sounds unbelievable. But friend, what I'm telling you right now about that jail sentence is not some conspiracy theory. It is reality. He was on job work release. Now, whether this was done through the West Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, maybe their hands were tied, if that's what the Senate said, if that was all already lined out in this plea agreement that he made, all these situations, and maybe the West Palm Beach Sheriff's Agency, their hands were tied. I like to believe that. I know many of the people involved in law enforcement here in Florida, including have had some good acquaintances with the good people down there at West Palm Beach. That's a great agency. So why is this agency doing these very unusual things? Why do they give him a jail cell in his own wing? Why is he getting all of this soft treatment for a terrible, terrible major crime? Why is that? You see, the West Palm Beach Police Department, they had located not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 37 women who had been sexually abused by this man. Many of them underage. For that, he could have gone to jail 20 years ago for literally the rest of his life. But instead, he gets this glamour slammer treatment. Who does that? And we have to ask ourselves, was it because he was rich and wealthy? Was it because he brought the best lawyers? And who else knows he put on the payroll? Did he buy his way out of it? Or, as someone reported, did he get the sweetheart deal on his first sentence because he was involved with Mossad and other back-channel government services that maybe might embarrass the United States and its allies? Now, again, you know me on this podcast. I do not jump into conspiracies, yet there are a lot of questions that come to my attention on this terrible crime spree of this rich and influential sex abuser pedophile. Number one, what I think about is the sweetheart deal that he got. This special treatment when he received it with his glamour slammer time in West Palm Beach. 37 victims uncovered by the police department. The case would not go forward. Let me tell you, even before this deal, that where he was there for 18 months, didn't do the whole 18 months, got out even early on that. But even when he was sentenced to 18 months in the county jail and had this sweetheart deal going on, where the county jail was no more than a bad motel stay, before that, the state was going to go forward with no jail time and just put him, kind of on probation. Probation for the conviction of sex trafficking minor. Instead, he got only a solicitation charge. My friend, by the way, let me say this, this charge in itself is ridiculous. You do not solicitate a minor for sex in the state of Florida. If you're under 18 years of age, that does not compute. You can't be arrested for the solicitation of a minor if they're underage. That literally, if you do that, it turns into sexual assault or sex trafficking. That's what happens here in the state of Florida. So the Palm Beach Police Department, they go to their own local district attorney, and they see that the district attorney is going to go down this path where they're not going to give him any jail time at all. First of all, when they brought the evidence, they said, well, we're going to put this guy away forever. But then they changed. Why did they change? Why did that change? Why did the state refuse to really follow the charges that the West Palm Beach Police Department wanted for Epstein? Well, then the police chief down there, good guy, met him, by the way. He says, well, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to pass it on to the FBI. So then he passes it on to the FBI. And just like the state, they said they're going to throw the book at Epstein. Could be in prison for the rest of his life. Then, to the West Palm Beach Police Department surprise, the federal prosecutors work out this sweetheart deal. And here is the clincher. They ended up doing that without the victim's knowledge. That glamour slammer experience was without the victim's knowledge. And not only did he get that treatment, but that deal that they worked out, it prohibited, listen to this, it prohibited any prosecution of anyone even associated with Epstein's for crimes committed or crimes unknown in the future. How does that happen? Well, his attorneys say they just cut out a good deal, that they literally outlawyered the government's lawyers. But that really doesn't make sense. So, was it his money, his high-priced lawyers, his standing in the community got him the deal? Or was there a tie into black ops that would have embarrassed our government and its allies? And yet again, we don't know why, because the government is not really willing yet to release all the files. It opens the door, my friend. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but it opens the door to think that maybe there is something that they are hiding, literally hiding from the American people. Now, we do not do politics on this podcast, but I do believe that if there was something there that would embarrass President Trump, that's what some people are saying, because there's something there that would embarrass President Trump from those files being released. I just really don't believe that. At one time, he did say that Epstein was a terrific person. But a whole lot of people associated with Epstein, before the knowledge of his sexual abuse of minors was known, did those things. There was even a picture of Epstein with the Pope. The Pope. Bill Clinton many times flew on Epstein's plane. And they said that it is reported that he visited Epstein on his island, the big island he owned out there. So there's a lot of people that are connected to Epstein that may be innocent. Maybe they weren't involved in all this other stuff. But at the same time, I don't believe that these files are being held just because there might be something there that embarrasses President Trump. I don't believe that. I think that would have been brought out a long time ago when he wasn't president. They would have certainly brought that out as hard as they went toward President Trump, the other side. And, of course, all of those now, including President Trump, are distancing themselves from Epstein. But that's old news. That's really, I don't think that's anything that would keep the government from releasing these files, in my opinion. That leaves us back to the point. Is there something more secretive? Is national security at stake? Is there something that the government needs to keep from the public? Well, when you take in these things, then you got to go all the way back and take a full circle. Now you have to revisit the way he died. They said that he committed suicide, that's how it happened in the jail. He was already at one time on suicide alert because he attempted it one time before and was unsuccessful. So there are some questions there. Did he really commit suicide? Or was he murdered? Well, time's run out today, so we're not going to really get into his death, but we are going to come back. We're going to revisit this because this is something we really need to zero in on. We need to know why those files are being withheld. Why don't they just come out and put them all right out there in full transparency for the American people? Now, please listen to me. There may be a legitimate reason for that. There may be a reason. Maybe there is national security at stake, and we all know what that... Well, we'll get into that next week. So you come back with us. Come back with us next week when we release our next podcast, and we're going to be talking about how did he really die? What really happened to Jeffrey Epstein? Interesting case, and it has a lot of ties right down here to our home state of Florida. Hey, thank you for joining us today. Be sure and join us next week on your favorite podcast platform. Till this time, next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. For the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional information and podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of pixabay.com. That's pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag @CharlieCrimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you, so please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.